So, hi there, everyone. Welcome to the Mother's Day edition of Sunday Speaks. As always, I'm Cheyenne Severin, and today I'm here with.
Tyler Glock.
All right, Tyler. So, just to start off, where do you work? What do you do for the recovery community?
Okay, so I work at a treatment center, detox residential PHP IOP. Believe it or not, it's located in Texas. So I work remotely. I actually live in Florida. Um, I grew up in New Jersey, Bergen County, went to Pascack Hills actually. But yeah, I do a lot of nonprofit stuff in the community right now. I am what do they call me? The lead, advisory person on the Lake Worth Recovery Hub, which is our local recovery community organization nonprofit here in my area. So that's what I do.
So, today we had a bit of a central topic focus, and that's going to be on the legalization of marijuana, which is, more relevant today than ever with it en masse happening. So, just in general, before we get to specifics, what's your opinion on the legalization of marijuana?
Well, interestingly enough, I'm kind of libertarian. So part of me says that, it should be legal. The problem is that I kind of know the results of that, so in theory, while I believe everything should be legal, well, not everything, but more or less, most things should be legal unless otherwise for a good purpose. I do think there's a good reason to not make it legal. Uh, this would be a pretty long response, but I'll give you a couple key reasons why. Earlier in my career, so I've been working in the recovery field for over 11 years now. I did a bunch of work at a duly licensed mental health and substance use disorder facility, and we treated a lot of clients that developed schizoaffective disorder, and they were essentially um, marijuana-induced psychosis. So what happens is people with pre-existing existing mental health conditions smoke marijuana, and since it's like essentially socially acceptable now and like treated as quote unquote medicine and things like that, it's deemed okay, and it just has really bad effects on people with uh, mental health disorders in most cases, and it's being advocated as something that helps mental health disorders. And again, I've been around thousands of people in a professional setting and thousands of people in a personal setting. And I would just love if someone would bring forward all these people that are being successfully helped by marijuana because I haven't met them. So that's kind of, proof is in the pudding. I do this professionally. I do it personally. I'm in personal recovery. I hear stories every day. So again, I would be totally open to the idea. It's just that, the proof is in the pudding. Like, it needs to be based in fact, not just idea. And it's not what I see. And if somebody is going to see it, it's going to be me.
Okay. So you had mentioned that people with pre-existing mental health conditions are at risk for this sort of thing. So do you have an example of what are the mental health conditions that people should watch out for, where if they're considering starting using marijuana, like maybe I shouldn't because of this mental health condition that I have?
So it's interesting. Like, so first of all, I'm not a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
I observe and report, right? So
Mm-hmm.
don't want to give you like information as if I had a medical degree, but what I can tell you is from treating patients, a lot of the patients that I'd see, 19, 20, 21-year-old males, that are the ones that are going into, psychosis and having schizoaffective disorder, and they're candidates for schizophrenia. Now, you know, what it's up for debate what makes mental illness come through, but the fact of the matter is that they that's like a common, very common factor. I'd say probably 70% of the cases I see were like marijuana induced. So
Mm-hmm.
you know I'm also a speaker for alumni in recovery, and it's like, I go into these schools and talk about these things. And the truth of the matter is people start smoking marijuana first, and they think, oh, well, it's not that dangerous. Well, in the mental health world, it's one of the most dangerous. Everybody likes to think, hallucinogenics like acid and, LSD and magic mushrooms put people into psychosis and are all in all the psych wards. That's actually not the most common thing. The most common thing is marijuana, believe it or not.
I actually didn't know that. Do you think with people being medically prescribed marijuana for such conditions, it's going to work its way into more general practice? Do you think we're going to see the effects of that, or do you think it's not an issue?
So in working in substance use disorder treatment, again, for a long time now, our industry has evolved to the point where we actually have things called MMJ treatment facilities that prescribe marijuana in the treatment center for addiction.
Mm.
So, it's like anything, like things get pushed further and further and further to the point where like the social acceptability is too far for a factual basis of the common good, so like none of those places have high success rates, and
Oh,
they might like tell you, oh, well, this data and that data, it's, from where I'm sitting, it's not there, so I already see it making its way into medicine and what I believe as being, leveraged in a negative way, as if it's a good thing, because, honestly, I do believe there's a lot of money behind it. There's a lot of tax for the government. So, the government, they'll buy into anything that they can tax. Look at cigarettes. I mean, come on, they let that go on for 100 years. So revenue's down from cigarettes. What's the new one? Here we go. Here's marijuana, you know?
yeah. I see that especially since I'm sure you've noticed, but the prices of cigarettes have gone like way up.
hmm But the sales are down. Cigarette sales in the last 20 years are, I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but I bet if you look, they went way down. And, they need a replacement for that tax revenue. So the government's happy to, tax something new to replace that, I'm sure.
Hmm. So, not just medically is marijuana becoming more prevalent, but I think we've seen a rise in like dispensaries and people getting their licenses, or I don't know if they're called licenses, but just like, what the documentation for it to be.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
recreational use card. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because again, the libertarian in me tells me, I look at how terrible prohibition was. It was a huge failure if you, read the history on it, right?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
invited all kinds of crime and I mean, everyone was just doing it and lying, right? So some of that theory is applied to marijuana. Like people are going to smoke it anyway. So why not just regulate it? And as I said, tax it, recreational we're talking about here. So actually, I agree with that side of it. Um, the tax motivation is a different subject, but again, the theory I agree with. The interesting thing about marijuana is if and I was thinking about this before we were going to talk today. Um, if you go throughout your entire day drinking alcohol, you're going to have a rough time, you know, things are going to be strange, you're going to get addicted. People are going to notice. You're going to have serious life consequences. Honestly, most people will, right? If you do that. If you go throughout your day smoking marijuana, you're not going to have those same extreme consequences.
Hmm.
You might crash car now and then, but if you're drunk all the time, you're going to crash car after car. People are going to notice. You're not going to be able to function, right? But with marijuana, you're more high functioning, right? The problem is the emotional effect and the mental effect doesn't correlate with the level of functioning. So while you are able to function, which is what people focus on, oh, it's a functional drug that people can function on, your emotional impact, your intellectual, all the things, I mean, self motivation, there's just honestly like just something as simple as like a ability to connect with people. It's all affected, and I'm not saying it's like, they used to have these pot commercials where you turn into a zombie and things like that. I don't believe any of that. But the truth is, if you're using marijuana on a daily basis, which is what, I think it's like 37% of recreational users use it daily, a lot. So just talking about those people, if you're using that substance all day, your a lot of people are essentially in denial of the actual effects it has on them because they don't have the same consequences as you would a different substance like alcohol, like your direct daily consequence. So, oh, it's okay if you're not, it's not, because you're still having those emotional effects. You're still having the extreme dependence nature. So people say, oh, well, you can't be dependent on marijuana. Tell that to somebody who smokes it every day. Tell that to me when I was 17 and I couldn't go to sleep without smoking marijuana. I was dependent on marijuana. Was I going into physical withdrawal from not having it like alcohol? Absolutely not. But I was emotionally dependent on the substance. And having an emotional dependence on a drug, which we all know it is, whether it's recreational or not, that's not something that I think should be socially acceptable. And, kind of bringing this back around, opening a dispensary is signing on the dotted line that this is like an acceptable behavior for our citizens that we think is something they should be doing.
So, all that's to say, you think that's why it's more socially acceptable than other substances?
Of course. And, I have friends that smoke weed and they smoke it all day. And some of them own businesses and companies. And, I definitely would say they're higher functioning than an alcoholic. But, there's a level of functioning that most people that smoke marijuana on a daily basis, and I get a lot of pushback for saying this, don't reach their full potential as those who don't participate. And, people have argued they picked out, famous people that smoke and they're super successful and all that, Joe Rogan, whatever, and that's great. Majority wise, it's not there. Show me the data. The fact of the matter is that it's a lifestyle that's not conducive to being successful and happy, being dependent on a substance for happiness and, some kind of completion or contentment is not a healthy thing, and we shouldn't pretend it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something that I read about marijuana, and something you said made me think of this, was that people who initially take it to help their anxiety, they take it and it lessens the anxiety, but then when they are off it, instead of going through withdrawal and everything, or I guess this is just more of a different form of it, then the anxiety levels were heightened more so than they were before they started using.
Sure. And a lot of people, one day it just changes. For me, again, I'm in recovery from more serious drugs. But again, I'm saying all this as somebody who smoked marijuana every day for, a long time, from 16 to 23, and then one day, honestly, it started to get like it had the opposite effect and it instilled like extreme anxiety. And, but again, I haven't even really touched on the idea of being like a gateway drug, and that's I guess the last general point I'll make is it's like a level of acceptability. And we talk about this in the addiction realm a lot. People don't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to shoot heroin or what's now fentanyl into my arm. There are stages of acceptance and normality that they go through to get to that point, right?
Right.
Marijuana is the first step towards doing something that is a minor mood altering substance that has an extreme effect on you. And again, if you smoke weed once a month or, or it's just like going to a bar, that's okay. Right. But like many marijuana users don't use it that way. That's just the fact of the matter. The people who are, and I'll call them out, but I can almost guarantee you most of the people who want this to happen, who are extremely behind this movement, smoke weed all day. And I challenge them to come forward and say otherwise, because it's just true in most cases. But my point being with the gateway drug, that's what I did, right? Marijuana was the first acceptable thing. And now that I was in that, and it's a cultural thing, and, it's not true. I'm not saying all marijuana smokers do drugs other drugs, because most of them don't. But the culture allows for the entry of those other drugs into it. Right. So now you have people that may have a bag of mushrooms, which is exactly how I got introduced to mushrooms. Right. I was smoking weed with some people and that's what we did. And then they said, hey, I have magic mushrooms. And that was the first time I did mushrooms. I crossed another line. I would have never been hanging out with friends and just, let's say, watching a softball game, and somebody would have just said, hey man, I know we've never done any substances together, but here's a big bag of mushrooms. Let's eat them right now. That's not how it works, right? So there's no deniability in that. I'm right. Nobody's going to argue that. So the sheer fact that it is essentially, you can't argue it's not a gateway drug. That would be somebody who didn't go to high school, didn't go to Hills, didn't go, it would be complete insanity to deny that.
Mm-hmm. I hear that all the time, and I heard that going through high school, and middle school, probably elementary school and there, where it's just like, it's a gateway drug. It has the potential to be so dangerous. And yet, it's becoming one of the more acceptable things for people to do. And that's just such a weird thought to have. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I mean, listen, as I said, I have friends who, are very successful that smoke marijuana, right? But I think the question here isn't, do you want people to legally be able to smoke marijuana? Mm-hmm. Because I honestly, don't know if I necessarily have an absolute opinion in that. What I will say is I would not want a dispensary next to me. Yeah. That's the fact. They have them where I live in Florida now. We have them downtown West Palm Beach. I'm sure you can guess what kind of area it is around the dispensary. Do I have to tell you, or does everybody already magically know what kind of area it is? Mm-hmm. It's not great. It's not a healthy environment. There's adding those things to your community, there has to be, and again, I can call it, because I'm an outsider, I'll call it how I see it, but why would you possibly want to add something like this to your community? Is there supporting data, like actual data saying that this is beneficial? I'd love to see something that shows this is beneficial. Recreational is a specific term for a reason. I'll give you an example. I ride enduros, like dirt bikes, off-road. That's a recreational vehicle. I'm not going to sit here and argue the benefits for everyone else for me riding dirt bikes. I just enjoy it, and I have to find legal places off-road to do it, and that's on me, right? I'm not going to go preach to everyone how dirt bikes will change your life and they should, it's just something I recreationally enjoy, At the same time, like, I just wouldn't want, if a non-dirt bike rider probably doesn't want a dirt bike track next to their house, and because it might have an effect on them and their family. Like in that case, it would be like noise. But my whole point with this is, I know the community. I'm from Woodcliff Lake. I went to Pascack Hills. Why would you want a dispensary in that town? Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't you just want to be able to drive 20 or 25 minutes to a different town to buy it? Is it a convenience? No. It's tax revenue. Everyone else is making the money. Why can't we make the money? And you want to sacrifice your own neighborhoods and your children who are going to see that and say, oh, well, that's the kind of place we live. That's what's okay. You're going to normalize marijuana, which I think I did a decent job of describing why it shouldn't be absolutely normalized. Maybe I didn't, maybe people disagree with me. And then you're going to put it in your backyard and just because you can make a little extra money off of it.
Thank you, Tyler. We're just about at 20 minutes now. Do you have any final comments, questions, concerns before we end off?
No, well, I'll make a statement. Yeah, I'll just say I really appreciate coming on and doing this. I do a lot of public speaking, and this is something I'm very passionate about. As I said in my personal life, I help people with addiction and whatnot. I do it for a career, and I've extended this to all Woodcliff Lake residents, especially ones I grew up with. But feel free to reach out to me if you have a family member or a friend that needs help. I actually get those calls all the time, and I just love being there for people. So yeah, if you ever need anything, let me know.
Okay. Thank you for coming on today, Tyler.
All right. Thank you.
Have a nice day.
You too. Bye.